Hey guys, we are back updating the power rankings for Survivor 46 following episode 9, and this was another pretty solid episode. Definitely enjoyable for the most part, though it also had some weird things with it, but we'll get to that soon enough. But there are 9 players to talk about, and as always, any more time, let's get right into the video. So starting off at number 9, we have the boot for this week, and here we have Hunter, who has a pretty interesting downfall here. Now, straight up coming into the tribal, I did think it was going to lead to an obvious Q boot. However, during the tribal itself, we did start to see Hunter getting a bit more paranoid with him, like trying to whisper to people, trying to confirm that the votes were going a certain way. And obviously that leads into him being taken out with an idol in his pocket. And Hunter is someone that I have gone down on over the course of the season, where even though he was my winner pick coming into it, and he was relatively high in contention early on, I did start to back off of him as the merge went on, to where I did drop him coming into this latest week. And truth be told, I felt like he was probably doomed anyway, considering he had just lost Tevin, one of his closest allies. You have him being this big physical threat, and obviously there is some setup to him being taken out with the idol in his pocket, considering he talked so much about trying to find a way to not play the idol that he just got a bit too cute there. So it doesn't shock me that Hunter ended up being taken out before the end, and truth be told, even if he had played the idol here, I still feel like he would have been a massive threat down the road, to where it would have been hard for him to actually get towards the end of the game. But obviously he is now out of the game, which is why he is here at number 9. And before we continue, I am once again partnering up with Russell Muscle TV to promote Idle Plays. Idle Plays is an online shop where you can purchase Survivor puzzles and practice them. That way you can potentially be the next challenge beast on Survivor 47 and beyond. In this season, we have creator lockers. These are special bundles handpicked by myself and other Survivor YouTubers, along with creator trading cards. If you purchase my puzzle, you can get your hands on the Labyrinth Ball puzzle, the Slide puzzle, and Spencer's puzzle from Survivor Cambodia. If you want to take home these puzzles and more, feel free to use my link in the description or use my affiliate code, Survivor Gumball, and start prepping now. And with that, there are 8 players left in the game to talk about, and as usual, I'll be ranking them based on how likely they think they are to win the game based on their edit and current game position. But at number 8, the person I believe is the least likely to win from this point on is still Q. And Q got a mostly bad episode here, where we really see the fallout of his antics from the last tribal, where he talked about wanting to quit. And it does seem like at this point that he did genuinely want to give up his game, where I thought before there could have been a chance that he was trying to use this to try to pivot votes away from him. It does seem here that he did actually try to quit, and he really lost a lot of respect from this move, where we actively see people talking in the episode about how they're not going to vote for him if he gets to the end, and all that's really bad there. But even beyond that, he got a pretty massive edit these last couple of episodes that made me think he was being set up for a downfall. And despite all the craziness, like talking about how there could have been this Tiffany blindside, a part of me did think coming into it that the votes were going to fall onto Q by the end of it. And to be fair, the votes are split onto him along with Hunter, though obviously Hunter became the juicier target at the point where it became a tied vote and Hunter did not play his idol. So it makes sense why Q survives his vote, but even then he votes for Ben, which is not ideal. And moving forward, I feel like he'll continue to be a pretty obvious target, and even if he gets to the end, we've literally seen people talk about not voting for him. So really, I think he's pretty doomed at this point, where I feel like he'll either be taken out before the end, or he'll just lose when he gets to the end. So for those reasons, I do have him here at number 8. Now moving on to number 7, and we have another person who I'm pretty confident is not winning, but I feel like they have more of a shot of being a losing finalist at this point, and here we have Liz. Now, Liz here got a pretty bad episode as well, where we really see how her move of taking out Tevin just didn't pan out the way that she thought it would, where she seemed to get pretty emotional over the fact that she didn't get the credit for the Tevin move, and how she's just getting lost in the shuffle again, which to me is setting up like this pretty bad storyline where either she's going to try to overplay and completely spiral in the game, or she's just going to get to the end and no one gives her credit for anything that she does over the course of the game. Now, truth be told, from a pure game standpoint, I said this before, I feel like it was a bad move for her to take out Tevin at that last round, and I feel like Hunter's exit interview only further solidified that, where it really feels like she just took out one of her closest allies at the first moment where they lost Soda, which did seem to be the main reason why she remained loyal to Tevin and Hunter to begin with, but really it was just a bad move, not only from Tevin, but also from Liz here. So for her to also get this content about how she's not getting credit for things makes me think that she's probably not primed to do well, where she'll either just flame out or she'll just get to the end and not get credit for anything, sort of setting up that aspect of her game. But I do feel like at this point she's more likely to get to the end compared to Q, where I just don't see a path for Q to actually be taken to the end by the end of it. I can at least see a world where Liz is dragged and gets no votes at the end, which is why she's here at number 7. Now moving on to number 6, and we have another person who got a pretty strange episode if you ask me, but we do have Venus. Now, I was a bit conflicted over what to make of Venus's edit here, where on one hand, she does get that content early on about how, like, Hunter's the village idiot and that he was on the wrong side of the vote, and how Karma's gonna bite Hunter in the butt when she votes for Hunter by the end. And you can say that that culminates her talking earlier in the season about Hunter's this big threat and how she wants to take him out. But on the other hand, it feels like she doesn't get any credit for the actual Hunter move, where she doesn't even vote for Hunter initially, voting for Q, though you can chalk that up to it being a vote split. But even beyond that, she doesn't get any credit on the show for pitting the votes onto Hunter, where she really seems to be all over the place, where she talks about how like they could go for a third option aside from Hunter and Q before the actual vote. And I feel like the fact that the show doesn't prop up Venus more for the eventual Hunter boot is a pretty big sign that she's probably not winning by the end of it. Then also, like, again, she seems to be a pretty bad player. I just can't really see how she wins a jury vote based on the content she's already gotten, as well as the game that she's playing. So, because of that, I don't think Venus is winning either. Though I could also see her being a losing finalist, kind of alongside Liz. But for now, I do have her here number 6. Now moving on to number 5, and we have another person who I don't think is winning at this point, and is probably going to be taken up before the end. And here we have Tiffany. And I've said this all season, but I never really saw Tiffany as a true contender to win, where I always saw her as this big threat to be taken out down the line. And we are seeing that play out now, where we do see like people talking about wanting to take out Tiffany. Even her closest ally in Kenzie talks about how like they knew it was going to be between them and that it's time to take the shot against them. And at the same time, this was a pretty bad episode for Tiffany as well, where she spends a lot of the episode talking about how she's going to play her idol no matter what, only for her to not play the idol. And yes, while she didn't need to play the idol, the fact that she got the content about playing it only to not do so is a pretty bad sign. And you also have the fact that she is already being talked about as this threat, and people are talking about taking her out down the road. So I do feel like that's a pretty bad sign that while she could put up a fight, she's probably going to be taken down by the end of it. And I feel like that kind of confirms what I've been saying about her for really a lot of the season. But I feel like the fact that the show is now acknowledging it makes me feel like she's not going to win. She's probably going to be taken out towards the end, which is why she's here number 5. Now moving on to number 4, and we have another person who is probably not winning, but I could at least see them getting to the end. And here we have Maria. Now, Maria's episode here is pretty weird, where she does talk a lot about the Tiffany plan and how there's bigger fish to fry compared to Q. However, she also says that she wanted the Tiff mood to be on her resume as opposed to Kenzie's, which can be a pro and a con, where on one hand it's bad that she's basically admitting that she's not getting much credit for things, but at the same time it could also set up to her actually being the one to take out Tiff down the road, considering Tiffany is still in the game. Now realistically, do I think that's the case? Not really. I feel like Kenzie also got set up to taking out Tiffany, and I feel like considering the way things are going, Kenzie will be the one to get the credit for that move. So I feel like that's probably not a great sign for Maria there. And obviously you have her relationship with Charlie. They are clearly the power duo on this tribe right now. But I still feel like Charlie's gotten the better overall edit during this post-merge compared to Maria, which makes me think that she's probably going to come up short by the end of it. But at the same time, I could also see her being like the Heidi of the season, someone who gets to the end as like the second placer, someone who is seen as like the main viable alternative to the eventual winner, but obviously the winner gets more propping up compared to them to where it makes sense why they lose. So I could see Maria being that role, but obviously that leads to her not winning, which is why she's here number 4. Now moving on to number 3, and we have someone who I continue to be confused by in terms of the content that they're getting, but at number 3 we do have Charlie. And I feel like on paper you would probably have Charlie around number 2 on the power ranking, as I feel like he's probably the main alternative to Kenzie in terms of actually winning the season based off the amount of screen time that he's been getting, the fact that he is the main character of the season. But I still have those general reservations about the fact that he could just be getting a journey edit, as we saw from about episode 1. You also have the fact that he's just the narrator of the season, which I feel like is a position that very rarely leads to a win. I could see him being the final boss, And at the same time, he gets these random like moments that feels like it's undercutting him. And I feel like this episode kind of exemplifies that, where obviously he does win immunity, he does get that set up before the challenge about how he doesn't like throwing challenges, which leads in him winning immunity. But then after the challenge, you have him like initially being on board with the Tiffany blindside, and you haven't talked about how he wants to be the one to make Tiffany comfortable. But then he talks to Tiffany, and like the first thing out of Tiffany's mouth is that she isn't comfortable and that she's gonna play the idol no matter what, which obviously is not ideal on paper. Now, at the end of the day, it's not that big of a knock, but I do feel like it's something worth mentioning at least, especially compared to the number two person. And I just can't get this thought out of my head that Charlie's going to be cut before the end, that he's going to be this decoy winner that people expect to win, kind of like the Jesse of the season, only to be taken out. And I feel like he's gotten just enough weird content that makes me question how good his edit truly is. But at the end of the day, I feel like compared to all the other options, he is one of the more viable options out there. And I feel like I have to have him this high in the ranking because of that. But I feel like the weirdness of this episode kind of leaves him here at number 3. Now moving on to number 2, and we have the person who was at number 3 last week, but we do have Ben. Now, realistically, I don't think Ben's a particularly likely winner at this point either, as I feel like him and Charlie are relatively close in terms of their edits, while there's a very clear frontrunner in my eyes. But I will say that this episode was a better look for Ben, at least for me, compared to Charlie, where he is the one to get the content about taking out Hunter, how this tribal has Hunter on a golden platter and that you only have one chance to take him out and that he doesn't want a sequel. And sure enough, he does get his way here, taking out Hunter, which I do think is a pretty good look there. Now beyond that, I still have reservations about Ben's edit. I feel like his merge episode in particular was a big red flag for me. But at the same time, I feel like compared to the other people, I feel like there just aren't that many alternatives to the number one person. And I feel like with Ben having a better episode in my eyes compared to Charlie, that does leave him here at number 2. And now at number 1, the person I believe is the most likely to win Survivor 46 at this point is still Kenzie. And for me, Kenzie is the frontrunner by a lot. I feel like that hasn't really changed after this episode. Though obviously this episode wasn't ideal for her either, where she does entertain the Tiffany blindside, how her and Tiffany know that they had to go for each other and that taking out Tiffany is a calculated risk, only for that to not go through. But at the same time, we do continue to get Kenzie's perspective afterwards, where she talks about how the plan didn't go accordingly, how she would rather take out Q in this round, but is reluctant to vote out Hunter because that's what everyone else wants to do. And I think that kind of explains her voting here, where she does initially vote for Q as part of the vote split, only to later vote for Hunter on the revote. So I feel like even though she technically doesn't get her way here, I still feel like the show does enough to explain her perspective on this vote, to show like why she ends up voting the way that she does, to where it doesn't feel that negative to her. Then also she gets set up to an eventual Tiffany blindside that I think will go through. I think she'll be the one to get the eventual credit for taking out Tiffany down the road, which I also feel like is pretty good. And again, I feel like with so many people being dead in the edit at this point, I feel like that leaves Kenzie as a pretty clear frontrunner. We're considering that Charlie is someone who's clearly being set up to be cut right before the end, at least according to me. And also with Ben just having some weird moments of invisibility in his edit, I feel like that kind of leaves Kenzie as the number 1, even though this episode wasn't perfect for her either. So I feel like I still am pretty high on Kenzie. I feel like she's still by far the most likely to win by the end of it, which is why she's here at number 1. And there we go, that'll do it for this week's video. If you like this content, be sure to like and subscribe, really helps with the channel. Now I'll be back again next week to update the Power Rankings again, so looking forward to that. I'm covering other shows right now, including The Amazing Race 36, Big Brother Canada 12, and The Circle Season 6, so you can expect weekly Power Rankings of those shows. I'm on Patreon, so if you want to consider supporting the channel, you can do so by clicking the link in the description, and you can also join the Discord server by also clicking the link in the description. There's a lot of stuff coming your way, but for now, that is the video. See ya.